Such a nice weather, it would have been such a nice time to fly the drone. It's so ironic that I actually flew the drone more during the winter time, during the less ideal weather, but now during the bright sunny day type of seasons now, I can't fly because of the law. I did find this comment kind of interesting. Ban trucks near airports and wildlife. The funny thing about that though, it does make me think though in general, like, when does it become, like, say, it's the aircraft's responsibility to stay away from other stuff, like, say, the drones and all that? Because even with the interim drone laws here, it's always about the aircraft safety, but when does it become the other way around? Like, even if it's something as simple as a drone. Because even like if it lands like even really low, it seems like people still have the argument with, well, it's the drone that's dangerous, that's gonna crash into the plane even at a low altitude. Like, in that sense, it never made sense to me, honestly. I mean, in designated emergency areas, yeah, but not in, like, you know, open field, public type of places like a park. Actually about to talk about recreational versus a commercial pilot. Something funny happened. Someone, I guess it's a really random message in many ways, someone outside of North America was saying he desperately needs like a drone, and he was wondering if he can like rent my Mavic Pro. I'm like, okay, for one thing, like, you're in a completely different country. I don't think this would, you know, work out. And even if I wanted to, I was even thinking, does that technically qualify as commercial work if you rent out your drone? Do you need a license to do that? I mean, it might sound silly, but again, it just comes down to all this stuff about what they qualify as like commercial or research and all that. Just generally speaking too, I would personally be a little hesitant, like, just to loan out the drone to somebody in that sense if I don't know how they are, like, skill-wise. Like, I know, for example, I treat it as just a camera with the way I bought it, but at the same time, it does require like some practice and all that. It isn't just like lending out a DSLR to somebody. You guys actually showed me a lot of stuff, articles and all that about drone crashes and near misses and all that, and I think they all kind of relate, so I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, because that's something I actually thought about as well, in terms of things like crashes, I mean, dumb drone flyers and all that, so I think it'd be a good way to put everything together in many ways. Maybe fine up to $3,000 for that. And Brian, you're suggesting if anyone's afraid of drones, they should look at crop dusters? Like, in comparison, they'll be more afraid of those and how low they fly? I was just trying to look at a picture to see what they look like. I was gonna say, are these manned aircraft? It seems like the narrative so far here is, as long as there's manned aircraft, it's safe. Alright, so you guys were asking too if I knew anything more about the that DJI firmware upgrade where it stops you from flying in different zones. The only additional thing I was able to find was a Twitter conversation between the DJI lawyer and just like some other people. And from what they're saying it's being, I guess, overblown in many ways, where it's just an activation of the product, just like you would have done when you first bought it to determine what country you're in. But then some people are saying, but doesn't this mean you will enforce, for example, like these zones and all that? And basically, by the sounds of it, he's trying to say, well, it's hard to do that. Like, they basically just provide like a little bit that's not entirely accurate. So if I'm interpreting that correctly, basically, it'll work the same as is right now with the way it is. Now, whether or not that will change in the future on what they can do with it, like, that's another question. I guess that goes to the point too how a lot of you guys say, like, for you, it's about buying a product and not having control over it, which is kind of weird in many ways when you think about that with anything else. Alright, so that leads me to my main thought today. Basically, it revolves around drones, near misses, actual crashes to airplanes, because as yesterday, I talked about how ever since these interim drone laws came out here in Canada, it seems like there's actually more news of airplanes crashing, you know, by themselves or whatever, as opposed to the drones being a factor. So Marcus, you linked this article and had a video of it between a drone and a medical helicopter. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't read anything on the site, but I tried to watch the video. And yeah, they basically show like this small white dot in the background, which I guess is a drone. It kind of makes me think too, because like in these cases, how dangerous, like, even if the guy's stupid in terms of flying up there, I'm always curious, like, how dangerous is it actually? Not justifying like the person to do that, but it makes me wonder again, like, whether or not it's completely overblown in terms of the odds of it actually, I don't know, doing extreme damage. Because Adrian actually linked another link here where it talked about, I guess, drone crashes and near misses, whereas this report tries to focus on actual incidents in a way, as opposed to just, quote, near misses. But essentially, according to this, they're saying like the odds of a drone crashing into, I guess, the aircraft and causing some kind of fatal injury is really small. Now, this is as opposed to things like a bird, for example, or wildlife, I assume, and it's kind of interesting looking at the graphs when it shows like all the wildlife strikes and how many collisions or fatal accident it caused. Holy cow. And again, not to say that something bad can happen or that people should be flying this close to medical helicopters and all that. But again, I'm curious, like how many of these reports, like other than near misses and all that, actually resulted in some kind of fatal accident in some ways. I mean, to me, that's interesting because I like to know the practicality of it because that's kind of important. But in terms of like a actual crash, apparently I missed this news, but DJ, you actually brought this to my attention. Apparently in the US, there was a baseball game and some weirdo for some reason decided to fly his GoPro Karma into the stadium. In my mind, it's like, what in the world are you thinking, buddy? Yeah, so you can see like apparently he was just flying it in there for whatever reason and it looked like he tried to take off. But I guess he lost his sight or whatever and he just crashed like right into the seat. Man, that guy's lucky nothing like crazy happened in general. Some interesting observations I had about that video in terms of the reactions, like the commentators, for example, even they were pretty calm. They're like, okay, like, you know, this guy is just stupid, thinking he can like fly his drone just like in a place like this. And the public's reaction to it is kind of interesting as well. Like the guy's cheering, like he got basically like a free drone in many ways. I mean, to me, it's interesting in the sense of in terms of public hysteria. Like for some reason it seemed like to people like, okay, yeah, it's just normal, like this is just one idiot, as opposed to like here, like in Canada, which from what the media portrays, everyone's like terrified by it. They see it, they think it's like a bomb, for example. I don't know, are drones really that like normalized in the US already? I mean, based on the news I read anyway, it doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like it's still emerging and people still have that fear, although not as crazy as up here. If I was to reflect that back here to Canada with these really stupid interim drone laws for recreational flyers and all that, how would a law stop a person like this? Like that's clearly stupid, flying into the stadium. Like clearly you shouldn't do that, but the guy did it anyways. Like how would a law stop this guy? So that's, again, like in my opinion, you shouldn't make the law so ridiculous just because of this one idiot, for example. Like you should have safeguards and punish like people like this, like in general. Like go ahead, be my guest, but don't make it so broad where you can't fly like in huge open fields and all that. I mean, maybe the guy should come into here instead. And man, these grass and stuff is really tall. You guys want to get a sense of it? Man, I would have loved to get a drone shot here, just a different perspective. I mean, you guys might remember from my other drone shots, there was basically nothing here. It was like an empty field basically with no grass. I mean, to me personally, for people like that, the only really way you can deal with it in a fair manner that doesn't punish everybody is to have like general laws where if you do something wrong, then you're gonna have to pay the price. And at the same time, I guess you just have to have a way to ensure, I guess, like when the person's using the product, that in some ways they have to be aware that, you know, flying in something like that is completely dangerous and unacceptable. So if they do that, then for sure they can't claim ignorance, like, oh, I didn't know. Although that crash was kind of interesting in the video. I mean, he just happened to crash like right in the empty seat between like two people. Like to me, it's like, what? Like in general, when I first watched it, I thought he had permission to fly there and he just screwed up like flying it. But yeah, I guess again, he's just lucky. I would imagine too, with the hobby growing bigger, unfortunately, you're going to have incidents like that. Now, how we react to it, I mean, that's a different question. Like, I know for people like myself, I will continue to help educate people as much as possible. But even now, if I can't fly the drone, for example, how can I educate people that way? Like in terms of flying a drone, like how to fly it safely and what to do. I mean, even in the beginning, like I said, my main way to how I became safer was to get a lot of practice. I literally went out virtually every day whenever the weather cooperated to fly. And at the same time, I actually went to places like YouTube and looked at tutorials to see how other people fly, to learn from their experience, and I think that's needed. But with these really dumb laws, you're stopping even people like me from educating those who are, quote, ignorant about the topic. Because I would imagine, generally speaking too, minus like this idiot that flew in the stadium, most people, they want to be super careful with their drone product. They don't want to be throwing away like $1,500 or whatever just for a stupid crash. All right, see you guys later.